Hare Krishna, Namaste. The question is, the highest form of bhakti is to get our mind attached to Krishna. The mind seems to be given more focus, even though the intelligence is higher than the mind. Let's see the answer. This question is based on one of the sloka in Bhagavad Gita spoken by Krishna himself. It's in 3rd chapter, 42nd sloka. Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhyah param manah manasastu para buddhihi yo buddhihi parasastu saha. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So lowest in the hierarchy are the matter. The next higher is mind. Higher than mind is intelligence, Buddhi. And higher than Buddhi is Atma. Here, the hierarchy is given for a particular reason. But it is important both mind and Buddhi are fixed and engaged in Krishna. In fact, Krishna himself confirms this in 12th chapter, 8th sloka. Mayyeva manadishtva mai buddhim niveshaya nivasishyashi mayyeva ata urdhvam na samsayah. Just fix your mind upon me and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus, you will live in me always without a doubt. So the first two lines of the sloka very clearly says both mind, which has to be fixed upon Krishna, and the intelligence, which has to be engaged in Krishna. It is not just mind or not just Buddhi, but both has to settle in Krishna. That is the highest form of bhakti. If the Buddhi is towards Krishna and mind is thinking about something else, there's a problem. If the mind is fixed in Krishna, but our Buddhi is totally opposed to our mind, then again there's a problem. Therefore, Krishna very clearly says, Mayeva mana adishtva Mai buddhim niveshaya. Fix your mind upon me and engage all your intelligence in me. Now, before we get into the understanding of hierarchy that Krishna has mentioned in the 3rd chapter, 42nd sloka, let's understand some basics about mind. This will really help us to understand the big picture, how it all works together. There are some points that we need to know about mind. The first point is, mind is a matter. It is a material element, a substance, dravyam. Like how we have eyes, nose, ears, tongue, skin. Mind is also an element, a substance. It is not an imaginary thing, that which doesn't exist. It clearly exists. Like how eyes, nose, ears, tongue, skin exist, mind also exists. Like how eyes, nose, ears, tongue, skin are substance, mind is also a substance. The second point is, like how the eye is an instrument for us to see the external objects, like how the nose is an instrument to smell, like how the ears is an instrument to hear, likewise the mind is an instrument to think. Now the third point, which requires careful attention, the eyes, nose, ears, skin, tongue has two parts. One is sthula, another one is sushma. Sthula means gross and Sushma means subtle. Sthula is nothing but that which can be seen, that which can be touched, that which has a form. Those things are called as sthula. A water bottle, a cell phone, all these objects are sthula. Whereas that which cannot be touched, that which doesn't have a form, are said to be subtle, Sushma. So these 5 senses, eyes, nose, ears, skin and tongue, has both Sthula and Sushma. The Sthula are the one which can be seen. The nose can be seen, the eyes can be seen, the ears can be seen. They have a physical, a particular form. But the eye is activated to see only if the eye has the sense of seeing. So that sense of seeing is subtle, which is present in the eyes. Likewise, the nose cannot smell unless the sense of smell is present in the nose. That is subtle. Likewise for the touch, likewise for the sound, likewise for the taste. So the sense of taste, the sense of touch, the sense of sound, the sense of form, etc. are subtle, whereas the eyes, nose, ears, etc. are physical, gross. Whereas when it comes to mind, it has only one, that is Sushma. It doesn't have Sthula part. So the first point we learned is mind is a substance like all other senses that we have. The second point we learned is mind is an instrument to think. The third point we learned is mind is a subtle element, not a gross element. Now let's see the fourth point based on the third point that we just saw. Since the eyes, nose, tongue, skin and ears have the sthula part, they have blood flow and they have pranavayu in them to make them function the way they are supposed to function. If there is no blood flow and pranavayu, the eyes, nose, tongue, skin and ears cannot function. Because they are sthula, they have a particular form as well. The ears has its own form. Nose has its own form. Whereas when it comes to mind, since it doesn't have a sthula part, it is only Sushma element, it doesn't have a blood flow in it, no pranavayu. Therefore, since it is sthula, it doesn't even have a form. Mind does not have a form. And that mind doesn't require blood flow or pranavayu to function. Whereas for the other 5 senses, it is a requirement. Otherwise, they will fail to function. Now let's move on to the 5th point. We know where the eyes are located. Obviously, on our face, in the front part of our face, on the upper side. We know where the nose is located. It is right in the center of our face. We know where the ears are located. It is on the both sides of our head. We know where the tongue is located. We know where the skin is located. Now, what about the mind? Where is mind located, situated? The answer is, it is located very close to us. So that means we need to know where we are located. We as Atma are situated in our heart, along with Paramatma. So the mind is also located in our heart. That is why we said mind is very close to Jivatma and Paramatma. The distance between the mind and Jivatma is very negligible. But then for the Jivatma to control that mind through the Buddhi is as if the mind was millions of miles away from it. Usually when we have something close to us, we can easily take control of it. But interestingly, even though the mind is very closely located to the Jivatma has difficulty to control the mind. So the first point, mind is a substance. Second point, mind is an instrument to think. Third point, mind is a Sushma element. It doesn't have a Sthula element. Fourth point, mind doesn't depend on the blood flow or pranavayu to function. Mind does not have a physical form. And the fifth point is mind is located in the heart region, very close to Jivatma, who is also situated in the heart. Now let's see the sixth point. Does mind get aged? As we grow older, the power of our senses becomes weaker. Our eyesights become blurred. Our ears become weaker. The taste bud lose its taste. But when it comes to mind, we hear two different interesting statements which defines the age of mind. The first statement is an aged man. Sometimes we hear that he has strong willpower. He has sound mind. We often hear this, that my grandfather was a strong person, strong not just by physical, mentally. Whereas on the other hand, we hear a different statement. A man who is just in his 30s or 40s, we hear is mentally weak. He is an unsteady person. He doesn't have a strong willpower. From this, it is clear that the aging of mind is based on some factor, not based on the actual age of the person. It is not proportionate to the age of the person. An old man can have a young mind. A young man can have a aged mind. So, the question is, what is that factor which defines the age of the mind? Whether the mind to be young or whether the mind to be aged. It is all depends on one simple factor. If the mind derives more happiness from external things, if it gets attached more to the material things, then the mind becomes weaker day by day and aged sooner. If the mind derives more happiness from within, if it gets detached more from the external thing, the mind becomes younger day by day, though one may become older day by day. It works exactly opposite. Depends on where we direct our mind. Is it to the external material things or is it to the internal spiritual thing? We must know that the happiness and distress that we get in our mind is not due to the external objects or the person. It is fully depends on the state of our mind at a given time. For example, say if I like to love to eat laddus. I have it right in front of me, 10 laddus, ready to pop them into my mouth. Right at that time, I receive a call from my manager, from my company, saying, today is your last day. We had to do some cost cut. I'm sorry. We got to let you go. At that time, the laddu which I loved, which is sweet to me, becomes bitter. Literally bitter. It doesn't have sweetness anymore. Again, it is for me. That same laddu, if I give to someone else, it may be sweeter for that person. But for me, in this given time, given situation, that laddu is no more as sweet. It's bitter. So whether that laddu is really a sweet or bitter, it's not on that laddu itself. It is in my mind. And the same laddu which tastes to me as bitter, if I receive a second call from the same manager saying, I worked out something, you'll be retained. Then that bitter laddu becomes sweeter. The truth is, the laddu has not changed at all. It is the same laddu before and now and even later. So what is that which made the laddu one time sweeter, another time bitter? What decided that? It is our mind. The more that we focus on the external thing, we are going to see this variation, this fluctuation. The more we focus inward, the less we see these variations. Let us see one more example to make sure that we understand this idea, theory. I am standing in the queue to get my plate filled with food that is being served in the temple. I am really hungry. My body needs food, otherwise I may even faint. As the queue progresses, it's my turn to be served. That time, the person who was serving there, who served very generously to the people in front of me, for some reason, when he saw me, he became miserly. He started keeping little quantity, just one puri, one barfi, one spoon of rice, and little sabji, which is not even enough for that one puri. And he didn't even bother to ask me if I need anything extra, more. Whereas the person in front of me had a mountain of food on his plate. He was even unable to carry and hold that plate because he was served very generously. Now I didn't speak anything. Asking for extra or more will affect my self-respect. But then I just simply went and sat and start honoring the food. That food certainly took care of my hunger, no doubt. But my mind was still hungry, actually angry. It was totally disturbed, thinking about the injustice happened to me. Therefore, the mind goes through different bhava, different emotions, like how the pancha vayus, based on their movements and function, they have been given various names: pranavayu, apana, samana, udhana, vyana. Based on the movements and function and the location, they have given these different names, but they're all one vayu. Similarly, anger, jealousy, greed, pride, envy, fear, sadness, all these things are different forms that the mind takes. It is all the thought of the mind. Therefore, thinking is the only function that the mind does. Mind is the tool for thinking. It can't do beyond that. It cannot make a conclusive decision based on its thinking. Mind doesn't have that capacity. Therefore, we have something superior to mind, which makes the decision based on mind's thinking. That which makes decision, firm decision, is Buddhi. And that is why Buddhi is higher than the mind. Another reason why Buddhi is higher in hierarchy than the mind is because the Buddhi, which is also as a different name known as Jnana, or also called as Dharma Bodha Jnana, or also known as consciousness. This consciousness, which is nothing but the Buddhi, cannot be separated from the Jivatma. But the mind is not so. Mind does travel with the Jivatma from one point to another point, from one body to another body. But when the Jivatma gets liberated, mind is gone. It doesn't go with the Jivatma to the spiritual world. But the consciousness stays always with the Jivatma in this material world, also in the spiritual world. We must know that consciousness is referred as Buddhi. Jnana. Jivatma is made of Jnana. It is Jnanamaya. And also Jivatma possesses Jnana. And that Jnana which is possessed by Jivatma is called Buddhi. Seeing an example will help. We have a lamp, a oil or a ghee lamp. It has a thread, the ghee wick, and it has the fire on the tip of that thread, the ghee wick. That fire, that lamp, produces the effulgence, the light around the room, which is called as Prabha. This Prabha cannot be separated from the lamp. Likewise, the Jnana, which also known as Buddhi, cannot be separated from the Atma. Whereas, mind is not the same. We will have the mind as long as we are in this material world. Once we are done with our business here in this world, we give up our body, we give up our senses along with the chief of the senses, that is mind as well. Whereas our consciousness be with us, travels with us to the spiritual world. Therefore, this Buddhi, which is our consciousness, is certainly higher than the mind. Now we need to know why Atma is higher than Buddhi. Very simple. Buddhi doesn't have Buddhi. Intelligence doesn't have intelligence. Consciousness doesn't have consciousness. But the Atma has Buddhi, has consciousness, has intelligence. The Buddhi doesn't think, I am Buddhi, I am intelligence, I am the consciousness. But Atma knows very well that it is a conscious entity. It has Buddhi, it has consciousness. Atma is a sentient being, whereas Jnana is non-sentient. It is Achit, not Chit. To make it clear, Jivatma and Paramatma are the only two entities who are Chit. Everything else, Prakriti, Kala, Jnana, are all Achit. They do not possess knowledge. It may sound weird, but that's a fact. The knowledge doesn't have knowledge. Another reason why Atma is higher than Buddhi is because that Buddhi is fully dependent on the Atma. If Atma is not there, no Buddhi exists. Like if the lamp, the fire is not there, then the Prabha will not exist. Therefore, the Atma is higher than the Buddhi. Now let's cover one more aspect. Even though the sloka, the 3.42 sloka in Bhagavad Gita stops with Atma, that is, the working senses are superior to dull matter, the mind is higher than the senses, intelligence is still higher than the mind, and the Atma is even higher than the intelligence. Now we need to add one more line to it, that is, higher than the Atma is the Paramatma. We are not just like that adding. This is all as per the Bhagavad Gita, also as per the scriptures. Because like how the Buddhi is dependent on Atma and Buddhi cannot exist without Atma, likewise that Atma, that is we are all, completely dependent on Paramatma. We cannot exist separate from Paramatma. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, that Paramatma is supremely superior. I am not sure if that is the right phrase to use in English. Nevertheless, it is to convey the message that is nothing greater than that Paramatma. That Paramatma is superior to Jivatma. Since it is the mind which plays an important role of thinking, therefore often we hear mind as a focal point, because that mind can think good things or it can think bad things. In this recording, we only focused on some functions of mind and the hierarchy that's explained in Bhagavad Gita. When time permits, we will share the information about Buddhi, the difference between Buddhi and Manas. Thank you. Hare Krishna.